Hey, hi, how are you? My name is Felt. Welcome back to Magic the Gathering. Today we're talking about the Obscura Walkers deck that I found online, honestly. I've seen it doing the rounds a little bit. I think it has great potential to be an incredibly powerful thing, and I wanted to share it with y'all so y'all can enjoy annoying people with this deck. It's very fun. There are a handful of really important combo pieces in it, but let's talk about the most important one first, and that is Luxiers Gift. I do apologize if you hear a band in the background. It is very hot in my room as I record this video. Luxiers Gift. It turns planeswalkers into creatures. Their loyalty becomes their power and toughness. They get additional +1/+1 for each counter on it. And that includes alternate counters. Let's say you have a creature like a card like Elspeth Resplendent, who's now become a creature who can get a, I don't know, flying, first strike, lifelink, or vigilance counter on it from Elspeth, which add to your power and toughness. So yeah, you can make some really crazy big planeswalkers as creatures while still being able to activate their loyalty abilities. And this thing only costs 1 generic mana to play and 1 generic mana to equip, so you can put it on whatever planeswalker you want. Honestly, you don't even have to do it in Esper Planeswalkers, but I just think it works best in the Esper deck because of several cards that can be fit into it, namely Rafine Scheming Seer, who is a flyer with ward who can connive to help you self-mill to get what you want, as well as just become a flying unstoppable threat that is very annoying for your opponent. Combo that with cards like Obscura Charm, which can return multicolored permanents with mana value 3 or less to the battlefield tapped. Hey, guess who's a multicolored permanent with mana value 3 or less? Rafine Scheming Seer. This deck can combo off very, very well within its own set of abilities. Rafine can help you get to exactly what you need. Obscura Charm can get Rafine back if you need him again. Luxior can make your planeswalkers insane, and planeswalkers are planeswalkers. The set we have right now is incredibly powerful. The ones that I personally think are the most important to include in this deck are Elspeth. Elspeth is almost non-negotiable in my opinion. The +1 ability adding counters and making your planeswalkers these massive flyers with vigilance, lifelink, and first strike, who are also, 20/20 power toughness, can be pretty hard for an opponent to deal with. Combo that off with the fact that you can place permanents with mana value 3 or less onto the battlefield with shield counters on them, which prevent destruction. Hey, wanna know who's mana value 3 or less? Rafine. So is Reckoner Bankbuster, or iTwitch, or Kaito Suzuki. You can make wonderful use of Elspeth Resplendent in this deck. I also believe the Wandering Emperor to be non-negotiable. She is just way too powerful of a card right now, especially if you're running Elspeth anyways. Wandering Emperor can show up and exile tapped creatures on your opponent's attacking step, or make chump blockers, or just add +1/+1 counters to whatever planeswalker you've pumped to be a monstrosity. Kaito is an incredibly powerful card in this deck, though I do believe he is negotiable. He's probably one of the best card draw engines that exist amongst planeswalkers right now. His -7 is kind of worthless, but being able to just constantly plus him for free cards to get exactly what you need is wonderful. Reckoner Bankbuster is another great card draw engine. It's kind of negotiable if you have other stuff you want to fit in instead. But I just think Reckoner Bankbuster is too much value. As for interaction and removal, you have Duress to just attack your opponent's hand directly. Very cheap, very easy to play. Fateful Absence destroys any creature or planeswalker. Great into similar matchups, like you're playing another Esper Walkers or an Ob Nixilis deck. Vanishing Verse to hit those monocolored planeswalkers, of which there are a lot right now, that are very good. Or even just something like Akami of Transience because your opponent is still playing Naya Runes and you dislike that. I've already talked about Obscura Charm a bit, but it can also counter spells or sorceries, and it can also destroy planeswalkers mana value 3 or less, as well as creatures mana value 3 or less, so Ob Nixilis, Akami of Transience, Runeforge Champion. It's great against some super aggro decks. It's just a really powerful 3-drop. You might even want to make 4 copies of it to include in here. I'm only at 2 at the moment because I think that Fateful Absence and Vanishing Verse give as much value, if not more. But Obscura Charm is really, really top tier. I'd say it's like A tier at worst. It's very, very good. I've included iTwitch as my other chump blocking creature to just put up a board presence. He also helps you learn. So that's pretty good. If you don't have iTwitches or don't want to use iTwitch because you're tired of using iTwitch ever since, Strixhaven, use a Shambling Ghast, use any number of other kind of wimpy 1-drops that are just there to be chump blockers. I recommend at least 1 or 2 because there's a lot of aggro running around, and sometimes you just want to put something in aggro's way. As for other Planeswalkers that I didn't really mention. I think Kaido, Wandering Emperor, and Elspeth are the best ones. I also have one of Kaya, Teferi, and Sorin. Sorin's probably negotiable. You could maybe replace him for Lolth. I've heard that Lolth can do some crazy things in this deck if you're just self-sacrificing your creatures to make her massive. Teferi's just very good for either tapping down your opponents or tapping up yourself. Kaya can add ghost form counters to make your planeswalkers have ghost form counters when they're made into creatures with Giada's Gift, or just be able to exile non-land permanents. The emblem, I believe, will allow you to replay planeswalkers from the grave, but you're typically going to win before that emblem even matters. Other forms of interactions, we run 6 different board wipes, 3 different types, 6 different wipes. May even want to run more depending on the matchup. Board wipe tribal is kind of a thing right now, and you kind of want to be part of it. Doomscar, great, kind of cheap. Spend 2 mana on turn 2, board wipe on turn 3 against mono white aggro. Maybe against werewolves. It's just very, very, very good. Farewell, great into your Naya Runes matchups, or maybe even other Esper Walker's deck, because you can take away their artifacts. Keep in mind, if you are choosing all options on this card, they go off in the order they are listed, meaning that if your opponent is running a Luxiers Giada's Gift, you may want to skip exiling all artifacts, because once you exile the artifact, the Planeswalker goes back to being a creature, because it goes off in order. It's kind of weird. Just play around it. Honestly, Luxiers is not a big thing that you have to remove off the field. If your opponent's Planeswalker is being a problem, you may just want to exile it instead. And then, you know, the classic Meathook Massacre. Drain your opponent. Wipe the board. It's great. This deck is very, very powerful. It's got a lot of potential behind it. It has lots of room for improvements and edits. This is just a rough draft that I personally have been enjoying playing. I will say, the Planeswalkers can be changed around a bunch. If you think Lolth is better for providing a better board presence, go for it. However, I think that Wandering Emperor, Kaido Shizuki, and Elspeth Resplendent are almost non-negotiable because of the card draw advantage and creature removal, or just +1/+1 counters they can't provide. Highly recommend including Rafine, Scheming Seer. I personally feel like at the moment my deck is missing something, and I think Rafine fills that hole quite nicely. Incredibly powerful flyer, with Ward to be a big old threat early on, as well as just, you know, conniving, constantly giving you cards that you want. Now, the mana base is a bit of a problem. As you can see, I'm having problems myself. Highly, highly recommended getting all the Call Time lands or the Strixhaven lands, all of the dual lands you can get, all the Midnight Hunt dual lands. As for legendary lands, probably one of each. You can make great use of Takenuma, Iganjo, and Otawara in almost every matchup right now. All of the Storm Giants is probably your best bet for a creature land right next to Hive of the Eye Tyrant. If you have to cut one, cut Hall of the Storm Giants. Graveyard Hate is very useful right now. There's a few Reanimator decks running around that are very powerful. But yeah, that's the deck. The mana base is up to you. Run what you need. I recommend a few tricolor lands like the Rafine's Towers here. I recommend most of your dual color lands be either something like Deserted Beach, where it's blue and white, or if I can find it, something like Shine Shatter Snarl or Shattered Shankdom, where it's black and white. Your deck is mostly based in white because of Wandering Emperor, Elspeth, Doomscar, and Farewell all requiring double white, and you're more splashing the blue and black along the way to play powerful cards like Rafine, Obscura Charm, Vanishing Verse, Duress, yada 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 yada. I'd recommend putting a little bit more focus on the lands that are at least including white mana on one side, but best mana base would probably be one of each legendary land, probably a couple of halls, a couple of Hive of the Eye Tyrants, and then a massive pile of Deserted Beaches, Shattered Sanctums, and most likely Bright Climb Pathways and Hingegate Pathways. Do what you gotta do though. Make sure you always include a few basics though, in case your opponent is running something like, say, Field of Ruin, so then you can actually get your lands back, or even a Boseiju, so then you can also get your lands back. Either way, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I think this deck is really complex, but it has a really interesting and fun core. Most important cards, reminder again, Elspeth, Wandering, Kaido, Obscura, Rafine, Luxior. Make with that what you want. and I hope to catch you in the next one.